Hello, and thank you for watching the NC F&B Podcast. I'm your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I'm your co-host, Matthew Weiss. Welcome to our video series. In this medium, we wanted to invite you, the listener, in to watch and be a virtual fly on the wall on our conversation. So we're taking our favorite moments from 4 of our most recent conversations.
That's right, and first up, we head to Downtown Raleigh to speak with the owners of the MOFU Shoppe. Both Sophia Wu and Sunny Lin were originally food truck owners, and in 2015 won Food Network's Great Food Truck Race.
Yeah, they're fascinating to the point where now they have their own brick and mortar shop, as you mentioned. So listen in, take a look.
Okay, so you have the dumb fucking truck.
Yes.
That clearly was not a name for television, I assume.
Correct.
So was this something between the producers and you that said, maybe try the phenomenal truck? Because
Absolutely.
that's a whole lot more television friendly.
Absolutely. They're like, you guys are great. We want you on the show. You cannot come on the show with this name. We have to change it. If you don't change it, you can't come on the show. So you're like,
such potty mouths.
I mean, we just wanted to teach people the right way to say pho. That was all.
Right, it is PHO, and everyone says, I love pho, but
Yeah.
it's pho.
It's pho.
It's pho.
Pho.
So, and well, since we're talking about pho, what is pho? What are we when we're eating pho?
It's like a beef noodle soup.
Beef noodle soup.
It's pretty much it's a Vietnamese beef noodle soup. We always say on the truck is like it's a comfort food.
Yeah.
You know, it's hot. You can add sriracha, hoisin to it, and it's very flavorful with all the herbs you add to it, the basil, scallion, cilantro. So it's just an overall
The best
comfort.
hangover food.
I was gonna say hangover, or like when you're sick.
Absolutely.
You want to knock out a cold.
It
you just
cures
go
everything.
Crazy on it.
It's like we said on the Terravita episode that chicken noodle soup is Jewish penicillin. But
Vietnamese penicillin.
there you go.
Our engine blew up the first time going down 147. No, what is that, Durham?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah,
147.
Durham 147 going off of
13B.
Roxborough. And we were
Right going into downtown.
Yeah, going into downtown, there's a dip and there's a light at the bottom, and thank God it was. So our engine gave out when I was exiting the ramp, and
I'm thinking this is karma because you called it the dumb fucking truck.
yeah,
She was not happy with
This
that.
super awesome truck. Everybody's still here
I
today.
agree. We think she has a life in her. Like she
She's a
knows
diva.
she's a diva.
Watch Christine by Stephen King if you've never seen the movie. It's Same
So
concept.
it's an old diesel truck. So when the engine shuts off, like my brake assist doesn't work. So I can't, like, unless you're like super strong, like I couldn't step on the brake hard enough to stop it. So we were going down a hill, and it was green light, thank God. So people were going up the hill. So we go up the hill onto Roxborough, I think, which is a one-way street. And then I can't stop, and then there was a red light, and then we were about to hit like 3 cars in front of us. So I go onto the curb, onto the grass. I missed a bush. Well, I hit the bush.
The bush.
I missed
You
the
missed the
fire
sign
hydrant
and the fire hydrant, yeah.
and the telephone pole.
Tell me there was a dog running by. at the same
No,
time.
I didn't kill anybody.
Okay.
I was just like, I was like, if I'm going to kill anybody, it's going to be ourselves, not anybody else. So we dipped our nose into a one-way traffic.
And finally
And
stopped.
then finally stopped. So the point of that story is we've had a lot of trauma leading up.
So, but the truck stopped,
The
and then
truck-
you're like
And then we
freaked
were
out,
okay.
and then you're
right, right.
And then after that, like we've had so many times, like the truck has broken down onto like on the way to events, and we just had to get towed.
Yeah.
So we've kind of been
We had
trained.
a little experience
that.
with
Now
that.
you're almost numb to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
when
what
we-
happened on the
when-
show?
Yeah. So when we were on national television,
It's
we were
like,
like, all right. The next step was to like, all right, got a tow truck. All right, we need to keep going on. We need to still make money. Let's keep going.
What's funny is we tied up the lines of a tow truck company because Sunny and I called them at the same time. They're like, I think someone just called.
There's another petite Asian.
Yeah, pretty much like.
I know in this town we don't have a lot.
She was like, no. The lady was like, I already told you we don't tow fleet trucks. I was like, I didn't
you talked
call.
to my business partner.
I was like, oh, Sophia must have called. Or something. Okay.
I mean, I have to say this, and you're gonna kill me when I bring
gosh.
this up, but I love this. I was
This is a surprise to me.
so I was looking through, I was researching you guys, and I never do this, but as a joke, I checked your Yelp reviews. And I loved this one. A Yelp reviewer, Robbie P., described you. MOFU scores a Ryan Gosling on ambiance and a Nicolas Cage on food and service, 2 stars. Again, once enforcing why Yelp is so fantastic and why we should continue to listen to what Robbie P. and other people have to say.
We had one girl say on our food truck Yelp, which I don't know if you've checked that out. You should go check it out. She goes, I would rather watch the 2 girls 1 cup video than eat. And I was like, did not say anything about our food ever. That was just the only comment that she left.
Well, that was phenomenal.
Well, that was those ladies' take on Asian food, and it inspires us to go out to Chapel Hill to speak with Charlie Deal. Charlie is a proprietor of 3 restaurants. We spoke to him at Jujube out in Chapel Hill, and Charlie gives his take on Asian food and, more importantly, how it plays with wine and cuisine.
Yeah, and he's also got a great beard.
That he does. Check it out.
So then I know there's some famous stories about you being a busboy that might have influenced your career. I don't know if you want to talk about that on the podcast, but and expanded your career. You looking at this like you don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I used to carry 30 wine glasses in one hand, but
That's not what I'm talking about.
No, we're not. That had nothing to do with anything.
Okay. You did talk about that.
I did talk about that at a Monty.
Yeah.
That neither influenced me positively or negatively towards the career.
For those that don't know, there's a famous story about Charlie getting propositioned by a nondescript lady while you were a busboy at the Dakota back in the day.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And that influenced your life.
Okay, just
from there on.
I got paid to lose my virginity.
Yeah. I mean, how many guys can say that? That's awesome.
Well, there's the quote of the night.
Yeah.
You told me when I had a good one to look right at the camera.
That's right.
There you go.
There you go. All right, so
How much money did you get paid? That's an honor.
$100.
So your virginity was worth $100.
Yeah, I don't know whether she would say that now.
Inflation.
like she had to pay at the end.
No, she paid first.
Yeah,
It's a long and twisted
maybe
story.
25 back.
Wow.
I mean, as I mentioned in the story, I think the prospect of deflowering a young man probably sounds more interesting than it actually is
Sure.
in real life.
Yeah, it doesn't sound
Given the fact that most of us
interesting
are
to me.
not that, most of us are probably not on our game at that point then.
Yeah, how old are you? How old were you then?
I was 19.
19, yeah. Wow.
Clearly, $100 does not get you what it used to.
Clearly. Well, aside from Charlie becoming a man, he also became a sommelier, and that led us to a great conversation speaking to him about his favorite varietal, Gamay. So what are we drinking here?
This is a Morgon Côte de Pie from Bontonnet. This is it's 2011, which I brought this out today because I wanted to sort of dispel the myth about. I mean, so many people think of Beaujolais as Beaujolais Nouveau, and then it extends from there, of course, and they think it's got to be something you got to drink right away. I was lucky enough to be at a tasting. Thomas Meunier brings this wine in, and he's actually one of the first importers in the area who's brought in all 10 crus. So his portfolio has all 10, and we sat down at a tasting where we tasted all 10 crus. And this one the line between Beaujolais and Burgundy proper was really blurred with a wine like this.
Yeah.
Like it starts tasting like that. Go back to typicity. Like, are you sure you would call that Gamay, or maybe you might call that Pinot because it's got the acid and the structure that goes beyond what the tutti frutti notion of Gamay typically brings.
I also think that Côte de Pie in particular is an outlier, but it definitely speaks to your point. And I just want to quantify for those that don't maybe know, or just think of Beaujolais Nouveau, or they maybe know Louis Jadot Beaujolais Village, that you have 10 crus, essentially hills or specific places in Beaujolais that make exceptional versions of Beaujolais that are age-worthy and do blur the lines.
Right.
Burgundy
and I
lines.
think to this day, despite the fact that there's more hype on them than there ever has been before, they still represent an amazing value in terms of like the quality, to get this level of production, this level of care, this singular nature of this wine. If this was made from Pinot Noir and grown, 25 miles north, this wine would cost 5 times what it costs.
Yeah.
And
because you can get this wine on a shelf for probably between $20 and $30 retail.
right.
Yeah.
And that gives you an average bottle of Pinot.
Yeah.
And not like, oh my God, this is really, really cool. This is like just like fine.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a decent bottle of Pinot for that, or you can get an exceptional Beaujolais. And in this case, where it has depth and character and all the things that make a great Burgundy, it's just made from a different grape and in a different place, and it's not quite as heralded.
And where do you think this went from when it was fresh and new as opposed to now 6 years later?
I never tasted this wine until this wine was actually, I bought this current vintage.
But typically these are going to probably be a little bit more fruity and jammy, like as they're young, right? But even the Côte de Pie, you're saying, is kind of an outlier, that it's a little bit more.
I mean, for Gamay, does make a super soft version of Gamay and like very round and supple.
So there's always been this notion about Riesling in Asian food, and why, and it was the right answer to the wrong question, because they always talk about spiciness and sugar, and because sugar is good it kills the burn, but the thing about it is that not all Asian food is spicy, but a lot of it is sweet. So the sweet wine worked, but not because it was killing the heat, but because it was matching the sugar. And so one of the things we've learned over the years is that part of our fusion is actually backing away the sugar a little bit from the dishes, and so they're not quite as sweet. Like if you've ever made pad thai, like I made pad thai with a Thai woman once, and I was like, oh my God, that's so much sugar. Like I was like, there's like a half a cup for just the two of our portions. Jeez. And the thing about it is that oftentimes the complexity of the flavors bury that sweetness. The same way like a complex wine can like bury the alcohol a little bit, and it can seem like, well, it doesn't seem that hot, but it's actually, you're like, wow, it's 15.5. Like I never would have guessed that. And so oftentimes you don't.
A lot of complexity to bury 15.5 alcohol.
But you said you've had those wines though.
Yeah, no, sure.
And okay, how about 14.5?
Okay, 14.5 maybe more.
And it happens with beers too. Like some high gravity beers, like you can be like, I didn't realize I was drinking an 8% beer, but I was. And I think the same. And so oftentimes, like the food doesn't come off sweet. There's so much going on, and yet your palate knows, your subconscious knows better. And so it still makes a dry wine insipid next to it, because the sugar beats up the. And so by backing away from the sugar a little bit, we opened our list up to the point where now we can like grab like the star anise and be like, ooh, that'd be great with a Syrah, or like this kind of things, and without having to worry about is this a New World high alcohol big sugar Syrah, or can I actually get away with like a Northern Rhone one that maybe it doesn't have the alcohol and the glycerin to match that sweetness, because we backed the sweetness away.
Well, wait, so what you're saying right now, this is kind of genius, and it's almost like playing Wine God, because most somms don't also have the luxury of creating the food menu as well. And so you have this Asian style cuisine that is many times what you're saying on the sweeter side of things, which inherently then makes it difficult to pair wine.
Right.
So you, instead of changing the wine you're going to put with it, you change the food. You took the sugar
no
out
choice
to
about
make
changing the wine. The wine is what the wine is. Like that's the thing. I mean, years ago when I was.
But most somms think that the cuisine is what the cuisine, and they have to work around it with the wine because they're not making the food. So this is kind of a cool marriage that you were able to massage both sides to make room for the wine.
I guess so. I guess you're right.
Well, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I love having conversations like that on the podcast, when you can get insight and just a shot behind the curtain into the mind of a guy like Charlie Deal to hear about his ideas of food and wine pairing. You just can't replicate that kind of stuff. So, and furthermore, it validates why we are the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast.
That's right. But sometimes we go outside of North Carolina to get perspective from another angle. And that leads us to our next guest, Miss Jordan Salcito. She is the Director of Wine and Special Projects for David Chang's Momofuku restaurants up in New York.
Yeah, and Jordan was down here in Raleigh to discuss and bring awareness to her Bellis Wines project, which when a sommelier that's as highly regarded as Jordan Salcito comes to Raleigh, our town, that's a pretty big deal.
Well, we were invited to go to Ashley Christensen's Pool's Diner, where Jordan was the special guest sommelier for the evening. Check it out.
you in
Look at everybody's
to
wants
Raleigh culture. Yeah,
Everyone wants to crack
I'm
these. Let's
thirsty.
crack.
Yeah, this is the
look at
Ramona
this.
wine cooler.
The Ramona Wine Cooler. I'm here thanks to Kellogg's Selections. So Jeff and Stephanie are friends from New York, and now I get to work with them here as well, which is
Yeah.
fun.
So well, let's say cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, like we're in Sicily or
Cheers,
so. and-
like we're in Sicily,
So,
exactly.
What is the timestamp that you're going to be remembered by at this very moment when we're talking about you and your career?
I guess where I would say a lot of my focus is right now, rather than just focusing on the restaurants, which is, and I think a necessary focus all of the time, at least if not in the foreground, the immediate foreground, then certainly, one level below that. But with Ramona and with Bellis, it's definitely focusing on production, and I feel like that's where a lot of the conversation is going when I'm talking with other people in our industry. Then it's really, I would say, like, even just reflecting back 10 years ago, the first conversations that really got me into wine were soil and terroir. Really specifically in regards to Burgundy, that was the first place that I was able to work harvest. It was the La Palais de Neige in 2006 that for me was the hook where it was.
So you were slumming it when you first decided to make wine.
I mean, there are other restaurants I worked at back in like the high school. Like my very first job, which I don't think I've ever talked about on
please.
a podcast, was at a lovely place called Peaberry Coffee. I was 15.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it was
I
great.
thought you were going to say Fuddruckers.
No, I was in my
Sticky
first.
finger.
No,
That would be cool.
That's Cappy's jam right there.
first restaurant job was at it was called Bandera Grill, but it was owned by Houston's.
Of course.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
one in Brentwood,
Yes,
Los Angeles.
yes,
And they have the best
yes.
fire roasted artichokes.
Yes, they do. And
It's awesome. In fact, my wife had tamales that were very spicy that night when she was super pregnant, and that night she gave birth.
that's
We said
amazing.
the Bandera tacos made it happen.
That's incredible.
Tacos.
And I went to Mission Chinese Food. Cheers to that, by the way.
Yeah.
I went to Mission Chinese Food. It took an extra 12 hours. It was like Mission Chinese. I got the process going, and then where was it? Minetta Tavern. I randomly had half of a hamburger, which is not normally my thing.
Famous Minetta burger.
Which
yeah.
was delicious, yeah. And
Basically, there's no need for induction, people. Get a spicy tamale, a burger,
to Mission Chinese.
right before you
Yeah.
think your kind of due date's coming up,
Yeah.
and voila, you get the baby. There you go.
it's that simple.
Yeah, that's it.
I would love to spend a little bit of time speaking about Bellis, the Bellis wines.
So we make 3 wines in Italy and 1 in California. I'll speak to and we at one point made 1 wine in Burgundy with Elixir Monti and stopped making that because I didn't feel like it was adding value to anyone's life. Like if somebody wanted a wine from Elixir Monti, they could just buy it.
Right, but how cool was it for you to make wine in Puligny Montrachet?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Of course it was. And I remember like Jean-Marc Rouleau plugged it when he did Levy's podcast. He was like, well, and the Bellis wine, Rochefort, which was very cool. But I didn't feel like at the end of the day, was I contributing to the conversation? I didn't feel like I was adding anything in a meaningful way through a wine because the grapes that we were able to work with were not better than the grapes. They were always grapes that somebody had decided to sell. And in Burgundy, every Burgundian knows the value of their land. And I think that is a different value proposition. In Italy, the whole thing came about because friends of mine who are not in the industry, when I was working on the floor at 11 Madison Park, wanted to know if the Ravenot that they had just tried was something that they could buy easily, and like, was it, $19? And I'd be like, no, and no.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, but that too, though, I would have to think that anything you're purchasing from Puligny Montrachet and Merceau are still going to be very expensive. So in turn, it was probably your most expensive Bellis wine?
It was,
so
yes.
Again, it probably didn't even fit the bill of what you're trying to do with Bellis.
100%. And that's why it was like a fun project,
Right.
but it was like, this does not fit into our mission statement at the end of the day. So in Italy, we are able to partner with different growers in different regions. So Campania for our Caldera Falangina. in Vittoria, Sicily for our Scopello Frappato, and then in Tuscany for our Girasole Sangiovese Chianti.
So it was funny, Matt and I, we do this thing, we're called the NC F&B.
Okay.
But we also do the NCF and bar, and it's really just like a support bar that we'll do for functions, charity, pop-ups, things like that, just to kind of help out, and we'll throw down some cocktails and do whatever. And we were pleasantly surprised when we walked in to the Jamie Kerr Kahn Foundation, which is a local charity or a local organization, foundation, was having their gala, to which we were bartending. We were pleasantly surprised to see behind the bar, Bellis Wines. And it all centered back to, of course, it's Jeff Kellogg's portfolio, but it goes back to Aine Rubistello.
I love Inez so much. Inez is amazing.
Inez is amazing. Of course, she's a callback to New York, Manhattan as well, but now lives out here. But she put all that together, and Matt looks there, he's like, I know those wines. And so we were sitting there, and we were making cocktails, and then, of course, sipping a little bit of some Bellis while we could.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
No, that was cool
my goodness.
to see them there and see that application.
Well, thank you so much.
So, on top of that, with the Bellis wines, it's very fitting that they were at a charity because you give a significant amount of your profits to various charities for each one.
We do, exactly. So the Caldera to Earth Justice, which calls themselves the Earth's Lawyer and is just fighting on behalf of the Earth. Scopello, we donate to Noma Gaia, which is an NGO run by my sister, which pushes multinational corporations to respect human rights. And then Girasole to the Tory Burch Foundation, which empowers women entrepreneurs domestically through mentorship and microfinance. And it's cool because we get to have a say in the way that the grapes are grown, and they're always grown organically with no chemicals or pesticides. And then because sort of I'm the only one accountable, like it feels, I don't pay myself a salary. Nobody gets a salary from Bellis, and so it's nice to be able to, in addition to that, for example, we sponsored a Syrian refugee child because we can, we're able to do that with Bellis. So it's, feel fortunate in that way.
I think Bellis wines will have to be served at Mike Lee's Empire, non-for-profit Empire restaurants.
I love his vision for that. I love his vision.
He's talked about it on the show. We've talked about it.
He is amazing, and his vision is so impressive and inspiring. That I was able to do that while opening Co, because it was very much a let's work with, like we were doing at the time, a rinse pairing where we would rinse a glass with Ganavat Van Joon and then pour Ganavat Cremant into it because it was the best pairing with this uni dish. And it's like Van Joon is this incredibly aromatically, it's so fun.
Van Joon yellow wine from the Jura.
Yeah, and if you ever need a ringer pairing, it is a molecularly extremely complex.
What was it paired with?
We paired it with a few different variations of that, but the way that we found that was because for a little while, like when I first joined Momo, Dave was like, blah, 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 and we were chatting, and he was like, I always really like sparkling wines, and I was like, me too, it's so good, and it's super versatile, and he's like, I always had this dream of a sparkling pairing at Co, and I was like, I would so love to build that and to drink, like I would like to drink that at Co if I were a diner. And there are so many varieties of sparkling wines or sparkling beverages. So we started with a sparkling cocktail. There were so many pieces along the way. And at one point, the chefs created this incredible soup. And it was a shishito pepper soup with brioche and orange gelée. And it was incredibly hard to pair with, and like everything
to pair with are always
soups, and like the pepper flavor was so clear. So of course the obvious thought is like Gruner Veltliner, oh that's green, that'll be good and herbaceous. And then there was something from, I think it was Salinas, where it was like sort of a sparkling wine that was like a little bit green and herbaceous, and we tried them and they just like muddled all the flavors. And I had been reading a book at the time it was the former sommelier at El Bulli who wrote a book on like ripping apart the molecular structure of foods and wines and pairing things together for that reason. And there was a page on Ola Roche of sherry, and it was like this will go well with everything because it's so complex. And so I don't know, I felt like Oloroso Sherry was going to be a little bit too intense and too high alcohol, but if we could do something similar, and we had Vangeon in-house, so rinsed the glass with Vangeon, and because it was a sparkling pairing, we're like, well, we better pour something sparkling into it. And so we poured some Cremant, and it worked so well with the
So
soup.
cool to use a rinse to then put your wine in a vessel that's been rinsed with a different wine. I like the whole idea.
But it makes so much sense because Vangeon has such a distinct flavor and quality that it will definitely resonate in the glass. Yeah.
Totally, and that goes back to the Dave's mandate of breaking the rules. Yeah.
I mean, wow. So, Matt, you're from New York originally, and I got to ask, as a sommelier in New York, is that a common practice to do what they were doing, where they take a Vangeon or a sherry-like style wine and rinse a glass, pour it out, and then pour the wine to pair with?
No, it's genius, and it's absolutely not commonplace. It's what happens when you get two monster creatives like David Chang and Jordan Salcito, get them together and just riff.
I mean, that's clearly bending the rules of culinary principles.
Yeah. And what's cool is, speaking of bending the rules of culinary principles, our next conversation is somebody who essentially established the rules of culinary fine dining principles in North Carolina.
That's right. So our last segment of the night, we go to Carborough and speak with the godfather of North Carolina cuisine, James Beard Award-winning chef Ben Barker.
Was there ever a moment where you're like, am I the Susan Lucci of the James Beard Awards?
Absolutely. That was an ongoing joke. And the thing about it is that, and you see this still to this day with national publications, they're a little bit more willing to look at small communities for great food.
Meaning James Beard is more willing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for those that don't watch All My Children back in the 80s and 90s, I will at least make reference. What Matt's speaking to is the James Beard Award nominated you in 92, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, and then finally in 2000 you came home with the prize.
Yeah, and I think they just got tired of having us come. We loved it because
probably what it was.
You know, we would go to New York every year and get to see people that we were fans of and eat great food and hang out in the city. Karen, my wife, is from Brooklyn, and so it was good for her to go back to her home stomping grounds. And so it was a real rewarding thing. But we did make the Susan Lucci comparison. There's no question. So. Came along at the right time in a lot of ways. You know, I think I had indicated to you that the real person who established this region as a culinary, there you go, as a culinary destination was Bill Neal at La Residence. And
exactly. And that's where you got one of your first starts, correct? You were at
that was our first. That was my second restaurant out of culinary school. I wanted to work for him, and this story is anecdotal to the point of boredom now. But I really, when we were in culinary school, Karen and I were debating as we approached graduation. We met on the first day of culinary school and embarked on that program with a clear, program to learn as much as we could so that we could open our own restaurant. And so we were looking at destinations upon graduation, and we looked at Northern California. This is 1981. And I was really interested in Napa Valley and what might be, because there wasn't much going on out there. We thought, man, I would be a rich dude by now if we had done that. We came really close, but I had family ties here, and I wanted to work for Bill. He would not hire culinary grads. He wanted blank slates. People that he could train and teach the way that he wanted to do things. And he was, really ahead of his time. He was doing daily changing seasonal menus based in French fundamentals and classic, mostly Provençal approaches to food, but still utilizing some of the great resources that we were starting to evoke here. Carborough Market, right across the street here, had just opened in 1979. Its original location was downtown, but and at that time only had like 6 or 7 vendors. But he was one of the first to really utilize that as a tool for the restaurant. I felt like both with Karen's and my aspiration to own our own restaurant, we wanted to work under an independent chef owner.
Sure.
And learn his style, learn his mechanisms, that kind of thing. He and his wife split up about 6 months after we graduated, and his wife Morton Neal found my letter of application in Bill's files and contacted me, and I got a job there right at the beginning of '82 and worked with the team that he had trained. And so I sort of learned with him as mentor in absentia.
Sure.
They all knew his style and methodology, and Bill Smith from Crooks was one of the members of the kitchen team there. Sherry Klein was a kitchen manager. Nancy Brown. There's a guy who's an architect and attorney over here in Carborough. It was a really great kitchen. The music we were listening to before we started was the music of that kitchen.
Sure, the Elvis Costellos,
yeah. The Ramones,
exactly.
The Clash, all that stuff. It was a great time because we did write the menu every day at 5 o'clock, and if we could figure out a way to call it something in French, then we felt pretty
you didn't
unafraid.
have Google Translate back then to
Right.
say, how do you call it? What do you say?
Tête
This
de
in French?
cochon. That would be like the only thing I could think
It
of.
was a really rewarding cooking experience because it really was cuisine de marché, market-driven cooking.
Wow, that was incredible.
Right.
I could listen to Ben tell his stories about North Carolina cuisine and forever.
Yeah, well, and it's not even just Ben that established all of that. Both he and his wife, Karen Barker, opened Magnolia Grill and ran it those many years, during which time Ben won the James Beard Award for Best Chef in the Southeast. But his wife, Karen,
That's right.
an author and a pastry chef, was nationally recognized as a James Beard Award winner for pastry.
Yeah, and actually it goes further than that because they're really the first family of North Carolina cuisine because we were at Ben and Karen's son Gabe's restaurant, Pizzeria Mercado.
Yeah, so listen to a proud father speak about his own son's start in the culinary world.
It's really been rewarding to see our son with his kitchen management teams, having grown up in the restaurant. He learned that we respected every individual equally, regardless of their role or their status within the operation.
Right.
And as a consequence, I think it's great to see the respect level that all of his employees have for each other because of the way he treats them. And I think that's what he was exposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go there. You mentioned your son Gabe, who had worked a little bit in the restaurant back when he was a little kid or a young man, but always in the front of the house. Is that correct? Like busboy?
Yeah, he was a back waiter.
Back wait, things like that.
Yeah, he was the one who he'd walk by Expo and always make sure I knew how hard he was working and see how hard I'm working, Dad.
Yeah.
I'm sweating.
But how did that transition? I mean, did you not allow him to get into the kitchen at that time, or was that not his interest?
It was not his interest. Back waiter when you're 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, it was really lucrative at the grill. I mean, he made serious cash at that time. And, I think that he respected what we did. He relished our role as chefs and the fact that it enabled us to do professional travel that he could accompany us with. And he got to see a lot of things, got exposed to a lot of things, loved food throughout his childhood and into early adulthood, went off to college to get the same history degree that his mom got. And the day that he graduated, he said, I want to go to culinary school. And that was the first we'd ever heard of any. We knew that he cooked, while he was in college, but I think it was stoner food and stuff like that. So
he had a hot plate in his room and made nachos.
But it was a surprise to both of us that he wanted to pursue the career that we had, primarily because of the time investment and how much he had seen that the restaurant had taken me away from
the highs and lows. I mean, we know you as a very successful chef, you and your wife. But how did you personally feel about his decision to want to effectively walk in both of your footsteps?
Well, there was, I thought we were intrigued by it. We discouraged him from pursuing it, not because it hadn't been rewarding for us or that at the time we weren't still being rewarded by it, but more by virtue of the fact that we just felt like there's many chefs compromise personal relationships because of their careers. And I don't think that that's always such a great thing. I mean, Karen raised both of our sons, mostly by herself, because I worked nights all the time. And so there were a lot of things that I didn't see and didn't do. Most of my younger peers appear to be much more aware of their responsibility to their families. And are taking greater control of their lives so that they can achieve a balance. I did not do a very good job of that. When he decided he wanted to go to culinary school, I told him he had to go work for someone else, not us. Because I think that, and certainly there's numerous young chefs who go and work for their families, but the best ones, I think, get out of the aegis of their family dynamic and go and learn from someone else. And so he arranged his own first job in San Francisco and drove out there, and went to work and found that
he worked in Delfina, right? And then
worked
for
in
the
Delfina.
pizza shop.
He started out with a guy named Gordon Drysdale, who was part of Real Restaurants Group. He was the chef for Mustards and started Fog City Diner and a number of those that group of restaurants. Gordon is one of a superb chef and a family friend. Gordon was a partner in a restaurant on Union Street called Café des Amis. It was a French bistro place. And Gabriel went to work there so that he could, rip his hands to shreds on the mandolin and shove oyster knives into his wrists and stuff.
Sounds awesome.
So he did that for a year, and then we had encouraged him to again do as we had done, and if his aspiration was to be in the restaurant business for a long time, to go and work for chef owners, and Craig and Annie Stoll at Delfina were people that we admired, and he went and got a job with them on his own volition. We knew the Stolls, but he worked for them for a year before Craig knew that he was our kid.
Oh, nice.
Which was
no
neat.
nepotism there. That's cool.
Right.
So it was.
They're Beard Award winners as well in their San Francisco area.
Right, and we thoroughly respect and admire the work they do. So there's no question that there is more than whispers of Delfina in Mercado here.
Right.
Because Craig's attention to detail, his love of ingredients, his understanding of the not Spartan but less is more approach to Italian cooking has clearly influenced Gabe's approach to it as well.
Oh, speaking of the devil.
Little pork belly scrub. Thank you.
We're
Your ears
talking
must have
about
been
you.
Talk about spare and Spartan.
There we go.
It's all about a taste.
Whew, that was a tasty pork belly.
Yes, that was. And if you are hungry for more of conversations like these, you can listen to the full versions of them on our podcast.
That's right. So go to our website, ncfbpodcast.com, and that's where you can download and subscribe to the show. I mean, it's amazing that every week we drop new episodes speaking to the people that are responsible for this burgeoning North Carolina food and beverage culture.
Yeah, I love watching those little clips to just remind us of how much we learn each week.
So, Matt, what else you got?
Tune in, eat and drink very merrily.